Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. As you can see, I'm back at the home base in British Columbia. I'll be here for a couple more days, then travels to Vancouver for a while, but trying to get to you as early in the day as we can. And I really appreciate the comments coming in asking for us to focus on certain things of interest. We cannot accommodate every request, of course, but I'm trying to do as many as we can. And my team and I get to work to try and get the items to you, save you hours and hours of doom scrolling so you can do more important things in life. Excuse me. So let's jump right into it here today. The U.S. has now said that since Iran will not come to the table for a deal, they are going to block. They're going to block that Strait of Hormuz. Remember, the Strait of Hormuz is that strip of water in the Middle East where upwards of 25%, if not 30%, of world trade travels through there, including a huge amount of oil and gas. That has a giant effect on many economies around the world. And U.S. now saying they're going to blockade it. Remember, Iran has said on two items, they have said no when they've been asked if they would please get their people out of the Strait of Hormuz, stop firing missiles at tankers. They said, no, we're going to continue. We want to control that. They've also said no to the advancement of their nuclear program. There's 15 items on a list that have been given to them, but these are the two most important. So, I mean, think about that. Iran, which has established the strongest network of terrorism facilities around the world, and we saw that, and we continue to see that in Lebanon, where there are Hezbollah encampments all across the northern border. And I've been there, I've seen those myself. They are attacked by Israel. The world media is trying to say Israel is attacking Lebanon. They are not. They are attacking the terrorist posts manned by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Anyway, they have said Iran is continuing to export terrorism, continuing to say no when they've been asked, please stop your nuclear missile, say that you're going to stop your nuclear capability in terms of weapons and your ballistic capabilities. They've said no to that. And the U.S. has said, that's it, we're blocking the strait. So that means you've seen maybe reports today, you'll see the price of oil creeping back up and the markets bouncing around. Investors do not like uncertainty. So the positive signs in the markets moving up last week, starting to bounce downward. You're going to continue to see that. Basically, folks, if you have stocks and bonds and equities, now is probably not a good time to sell. You have not lost a dime unless you sell at lower than you purchased. So traditionally, hang on, as Warren Buffett would say, or the song, and also the famous song from the past, let's hang on to what we got, would be my advice. Well, in Iran itself, it continues to be a mystery how that regime continues to run, because, of course, Khomeini himself, Ayatollah Khomeini, was taken out almost a month and a half ago, and so-called his son, Mojtaba, or Mojo, as some are calling, there's still some dispute whether he's still in a coma or not, whether he's actually dead. They think he is alive. Pretty well, everybody's agreeing he's lost at least one leg, and there's a lot of speculation on who's really running the show. Is Iran really on its last legs, as some have been saying? Well, it's at least on its last one leg. And it's been over 40 days since Ayatollah Khomeini was killed, and the public funeral has still not taken place. It shows a lot of these leaders are terrified to show up in public because they know they'll get blown away. And it shows that there is a real battle going on in the regime itself in Iran. The so-called moderates who would like to see peace and a strong economy, who would like to stop their own nuclear program, they are still at the point when anybody talks as a moderate among the top levels of that regime, they are assassinated, they are taken out. So there's a huge internal battle going on there. Well, when you look at interesting reports, let's look at some stuff in the U.S. today, then we're going to jump to Canada. Don't leave yet. There's some amazing things that are happening here. The FBI report, the latest report on crime for 2025, this is the one that's done and headed by, you can check it out, Jeff Asher from the FBI, who's responsible for coordination of statistics and communication. The murder rate dropped considerably in the U.S. in 2025, FBI is attributing that to the massive amounts of illegal violent criminals that have been deported out of the U.S. and the fact that they have virtually shut off the southern border to illegal immigrants. So we'll see if that continues to prove out. Well, it's sort of interesting, too, to see shifts in the media. CBS Network was commissioned. They've done a 6-month investigation into what the state of California was saying was price gouging by oil and gas companies. And so they have done a 6-month examination of that. Now, this is media doing it, so they generally get a little more intense than when a politician gets some of their friends to do a study. And they have concluded the price of gasoline and rises in the price is not price gouging by the companies because they try and keep those books open and transparent. Here's their main reasons for the price of gas going high in California and possibly other states, but California. State taxes on gasoline increases. Environmental regulations, which appear to have not too much to do with anything about the environment, but the cost of those regulations, and closing refineries because of protest groups who say refineries should be closed. Some of the main reasons for the price of gasoline going up in California. Now, something else, there's a trend here. There's yet another attack been made, this time in the state of Indiana, on a group that is starting the development of one of these AI centers where you need a lot of energy, as you know, to run the massive AI programs. And this one in particular, 13 shots were fired at it. This is in its development stages at the office level, and this is beginning to happen around the country in the U.S. It just recently happened in Maine, people attacking, people using violence, and there's a real uprising of protests, social protests. We're going to see if this continues about the building of these very large plants where massive AI can get to work doing incredible things, but people are saying they think that's using too much. These plants are going to use too much water. This has been traced back. Media's been traced back. There's a book that was written not that long ago called The Empire of AI. And in it, it got a lot of attention from mainstream media. Mainstream media generally, keep in mind, is opposed to growth, is opposed to the possibility that more people can becoming self-sustaining and that income levels can rise. And in that book, it took a while, but it took a few years, but and people scanning the book now on both sides of the aisle are saying, yes, there was a huge discrepancy posted in that book, misplacing and misstating the amount of water that would be used on one of these large plants, exaggerating it about 1,000 times. So if one of the plants, let's say, was going to take, let's just keep the number simpler, 1,000 gallons of water to run. Now it's going to be a lot more than that, but just using that, if it was going to take 1,000, the math done in this book actually would be telling people it was 1,000,000 gallons. So 1,000 times more water wrongfully being portrayed. Millions of people read that book, and so they are quite justifiably concerned. The error has been corrected. Even the book authors have corrected the error, but mainstream media still runs with exaggerated and I would say hysterical claims. So we're going to see if the opposition to these plants being built continues based really on false math. It's up to 65% now in recent polling of people who are opposed to these. So what will happen, my prediction is, unless this is corrected and people start looking at the truth and the facts, what you'll see is in the United States and in Canada, you'll see some of these plants, maybe many of them, not going ahead. Where will they go ahead? They will go ahead in countries like China, in countries like Russia, and China and Russia and these countries, communist countries and other vicious regimes will actually be the leaders then in AI. That will mean development and everything from better health outcomes to stronger and more powerful defense systems. So you will see countries like Canada, the US, and Europe begin to lose the edge. Much has happened with the extreme environmentalist, I'll call it industry, over the last 30 or 40 years, exaggerating the claims of harm. And what happens then? Development does not happen. And some of these countries, North Korea, China, even Russia, benefit from moving ahead aggressively. So let's hope we give our heads a shake and look at the real way to protect the environment, but also to see some of these positive developments that can happen in AI can actually go ahead safely. Well, a big story out of Lockheed. That's of course they do make airplanes, but they do a lot of things related to the defense industry and missiles and other things. Lockheed, in conjunction with AI, talking about AI, there's been a lot of exciting stories, amazing stuff, and there'll be more written on the rescue of that pilot in Iran who they found like a needle in a haystack, hidden among rocks. He was injured. He climbed up 7,000 feet. He hid in the rocks, and they found him and got him out of there. And it's something called ghost murmur, and they say, and this is the stories that are coming out of Lockheed, of AI, that there's been a development of technology to the place that a technology that can measure your heart murmur, the murmur of your heart. Everybody has a unique heart murmur, apparently. It used to be you could determine that first a few centimeters away from the person and then a few feet away. They said that this can be developed miles away, where they can pinpoint an individual and by the signature of their heartbeat determine if that is the one. And they're saying this is why the CIA was able to locate that pilot 40 miles away, not from a camera, but from the development of what's called the ghost murmur. And they determined it was his heartbeat, and that's where we see and we heard over radio the words "got him." In other words, they identified him. Let's see if that's true. It's amazing technology that's developing all around us. Well, again, just sticking to the U.S., again, just showing how fiercely left-leaning and liberal states and regimes, socialist regimes, they are panicked now because the people that they are taxing the highest, being the people who create things, the people who create jobs, the people who invent things, they will leave the states where they're getting taxed to death and move to states where the taxes are more friendly. And so what these states are, it's happening now in California, it's happening in New York, it's happening in Washington and the state of Michigan. They are applying exit taxes. So they're saying, you want to leave? Okay, well, we're not just going to tax you when you leave. We're going back a number of years on your taxes, and we're going to tax you based on years prior to make it very expensive for you to leave. So what will happen is if those companies cannot leave, they simply will fold up. But it's really amazing to see. There needs to be an uprising of taxpayers in these states. Unfortunately, more and more people are relying on tax-funded subsidies. But this is what's happening now. It's a tremendous amount. It comes down to expropriation with these states doing this to individuals and companies that create jobs and income, and very prohibitive taxes they're being hit with. Well, New York City, just every day something else comes up. So I don't know if you've ever ridden in a Waymo, one of these self-driven taxis or vehicles. I have done that. It was in Arizona and Phoenix, and it's completely stunning and amazing. I took a ride around the city in one of these Waymos. So what the New York City is saying, no, they're not going to allow Waymo development because, of course, they rely on the votes of thousands and thousands of taxi drivers, and they are going to be clamping down. So if you're looking for a ride in Waymo, don't be heading to New York City. You may be disappointed. Along with that, the mayor Mondami of New York City, who was amazingly elected, even though he's Islamist and hard left socialist, they've changed the title. It's pretty significant. Of most cities, most states, provinces have somebody in charge of overseeing economic development. So they look at ways in which positive business can be attracted to their cities or states or provinces. That person's usually called the officer of economic development, or in New York, it's the deputy of economic development. Well, the mayor there has changed the title. No longer do you have a deputy of economic development. It's the deputy of, are you ready? For economic justice. Economic justice. That usually means look forward to mass unemployment as the state, as governments try and decide what kind of business should go ahead and who should be punished with higher taxes. In Canada, moving to Canada, watch the news today. 3 by-elections coming up for our U.S. friends. A by-election is something like a special election, as they have in the U.S. From time to time, a seat becomes vacant. There's 3 of those now being by-elections today, and the federal Liberal government only needs to win one of those to have a majority government. There's been a number of defections It's incredible to see, especially from the Conservative Party, where people are walking across the floor to join the Liberals. So watch those. They only need one of the three. They'll probably win two, maybe even three. Why do people cross the floor? And why are Conservatives, who in the last election, the Conservatives won more of the popular vote than the Liberals did, why are they walking the floor? Well, look, one of the main reasons, and I don't want to come down too heavily on people who are walking the floor, but I am, because they told their constituents they were going to serve them under a certain flag, under a certain party banner, and then they jump ship. And I can tell you folks, elected people, they look at the polls, and my suggestion is that when people do, they shift, they switch colors. It's because they look in the polls in their own constituency. They're probably not doing that well as MPs. Their constituents aren't liking them as much as the last time they elected them. They're afraid they're going to get elected or not get elected if they run under the Conservative banner, and so they switch to preserve their own hides. It's all about the money most of the time. It's terrible, and there needs to be a way to correct it. But keep an eye on those by-elections, folks. Well, another thing to keep an eye on, we have an amazing, I was going to avoid talking about this, it just seemed too crazy, but the NDP, the Socialist Party, one of their members, Leah Gazan, has said there's a genocide happening, and so that gets people's attention. And the genocide is the mass obliteration of entire populations for political reasons. She's saying it's happening to people who are not being properly represented and who are not being properly treated. And she's named the community, there's initials that go with these. It used to be like gay and lesbian community. We used to say Gala. Then that got expanded to LGBT. Okay, that's fine. Then LGBTQ to add queer. Okay, fine. Then they put a 2S in front of that. Oh, two-spirited. Okay. Naming all the different groups that are apparently being marginalized here. And she says that a genocide, and she's got the longer list now. And I'm not making this up. It's just brace yourself. Here it is. I or 1 W G 2 S L G B T Q Q 1 A. I'm not making it up. That is now the official list, if you can keep track of all that. I'm going to say it again quickly. MM1 or I, WG 2S LGBTQ Q1A. Not sure what the two Qs are for, but folks, it's just getting a little out of hand. All people are important. All people need to be acknowledged and affirmed and uplifted. New premier in Quebec, and that's by virtue of the fact that Christine Frechette won the leadership of her party, Mr. Legault stepping down. And so we have another woman premier on the federal stage, on the provincial stage in Canada. Hopefully Christine Frechette will be like Premier Danielle Smith in Alberta with the policies that she has taken, which are leading to a very strong economy in Alberta and more jobs for everybody. We'll see what happens. Losing a little bit of hope in British Columbia with their laws now related to so-called DEI, this whole process of so-called diversifying and everything being equal and including everybody. They've just posted a job, and this is a constant problem here at UBC and in other entities that get federal funding, unfortunately. This is for a job working in the forest and the forestry industry, going into the forest, identifying different areas of need. And it says specifically in the ad that you're going to need to be either Indigenous or racialized, from a racialized community, not sure exactly what that is, and somebody also from the gender equity. If you are not in those communities, don't bother with applying. Not sure what your gender has to do as you're looking at trees that are in trouble, but this is a very dangerous direction that's been continuing under left-leaning governments and institutions. My suggestion would be anytime there's a department that's advertising like that, they're free to do it, but they should lose their funding. We'll see what happens there. The name Melanie Desjardins, is probably going to continue to become known in the news over the next days ahead. Melanie is a member of the First Nations Guardian Network, it's called, working with First Nation groups. And listen, I'm talking First Nations here, but this problem that we're going to be talking about is not unique to the First Nations community. It's a problem anywhere there is funding that is not monitored and not audited This is human nature. It goes back since the beginning of time. If the funding is not monitored, watched by somebody, it is going to be misspent. Now, what I'm going to talk about here, these are allegations that are being brought in court. They have not yet been proven, but the misspending of funding that is intended to help First Nations groups and individuals, it's in the area of millions with this individual. And breaking it down just quickly, millions of dollars she directed to TikTok. People are going, what? What? Directed to TikTok. There's all kinds of ways if you direct money through TikTok, you can get all kinds of benefits. She has misdirected funds allegedly through TikTok in the millions. One of particular interest, $750,000 going to a Jamaican musician, money that should be going to First Nations problems and issues, gone to a Jamaican musician. There's some discussion about how she knows this particular individual. Again, these are alleged, untold numbers of monies going to creators and influencers. And yes, you can buy robots. You can buy bots on the internet to make them look like supporters of what you're doing. Anyway, we're going to be watching that file. But what I'm saying here, folks, there's a whole new era of forensic auditing that is needed, and this is not unique to the First Nations community. This happens in all communities at the provincial, municipal, state, federal level. Anywhere where money is not being properly monitored, it is going to get misspent. Wake up, politicians, and start to put in highly experienced forensic auditors in all of your areas of spending. Well, Viktor Orban, who's been leading Hungary, as you know, he's leading Hungary, he's called far right and all of that, conservative, a very different tone than much of the rest of the European community. Just lost an election, and people are saying, well, the people are throwing out now the conservative government in Europe. No, it's a conservative who won. Peter Magyar is the winner. But Viktor Orban's been there for 16 years. Dear fellow politicians, if you are a premier, if you are thinking about being a prime minister, if you are a mayor, 16 years is too long. People get tired of you. I'm talking as a recovering politician. People get tired of you. And they also know instinctively you're there that long. You start to learn how to protect yourself. You start to learn how to pad things. So Victor, 16 years, time to go. And it's not a rejection of the conservative movement, which is still strong in Hungary. 30% of Gen Z now, 30% of Gen Z are identifying as LGBTQ, and that's a huge increase over a short period of years, but it just goes to show what happens when you have something that's taught in the schools and nothing else is allowed to be taught that would cause people to think differently or to counteract a certain belief. You will get an increase in that belief. It doesn't matter what's being taught. This is why you're seeing this is being socialized, but something to be aware of. 30% now, Gen Z, identifying as LGBTQ. Nothing like it before in history in terms of a social change in a short period of time. Well, for all you Justin Bieber fans, he, after many years of absence, he headed up the famous Coachella music fest and over the weekend, and apparently did just right from he was a kid showing. He basically did a documentary on his life. I guess the crowd was lapping it up. And apparently there was one of the most significant things in the last few years it gets reported on is his spiritual change. He has moved to embracing Christianity. Apparently there was nothing said in all of his documentary on that. I'm not reading anything into that. I'm just saying it was absent. Britney Spears saying she's checking herself into a clinic. And yet another actor arrested for DUI, driving under the influence. Look, I'm not coming down on these folks. They have untold amount of money, all kinds of pressure. Seriously, I think they need support, and I think they need encouragement to focus on the things that matter most. But yet another one, and I'm just asking all of these very, very wealthy people, look, if I had that kind of money, I'd be having a privately hired driver driving me everywhere. They also need, as we see with most of them when they're walking around, quite rightly, very famous and very super wealthy people, they do need security people. I understand that, and they should have them. Why? You famous rich people, you don't need to be driving drunk. If you want to get drunk or high, that is your choice. but get yourself a good driver, get yourself a chauffeur. There's many of them out there. I use them myself, not for the reasons Brittany's using them, but I just toss that out there. Ireland has, you've seen in the news, and mainstream media doesn't like to cover it, Ireland, huge protests over on quite a number of days. Even we have Canadian media going over there to watch it, and they're simply fed up with governments who are crazy leftists having all kinds of policies that just don't make sense, and illegal immigration being one of the real problems and concerns. And the government has just announced they are going to lower their gas tax because on the streets, thousands and thousands of people in their cars and their trucks telling their governments, you're killing us here. There's going to be a revolution. So folks, speaking up, and I'm not recommending revolution. I'm not recommending violence, but speak up. Governments will listen. Well, I want to close with this thought. You're going to hear more and more about quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement. This is a nuclear physics term, first actually raised by Einstein in discussions back as far as 1935, and it's this whole. It actually addresses the whole issue of not just can there be a God. He did feel there was a God or some kind of force out there, but a God that knows everything and can be in touch with individuals and know everybody and communicate. This is something that's largely laughed at by non-believers. But quantum entanglement suggests that one object in the universe, if it has been in touch with in any way, shape, or form another object, can somehow, there's a communication method, even if they're light years, millions of miles away, there's a way in which they communicate. It's not seen, but just as Einstein used to say, there was nothing faster than the speed of light. That's been challenged in some of these. It's now seen as actually a feasibility or a possibility that quantum entanglement, the ability for two objects millions and millions and millions of miles apart, can still be communicating and knowing what's going on. Folks, maybe that's true, and there is a God who knows what you're thinking and planning today. Think about that. Have a great day. Stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow.